Hello, guys. I wanted to take a second to walk you through how to redevelop your thesis statement now that you've done a little bit of research. So you're in one of two places. Either you have a research question that you now need to form a thesis statement from, or you have a working thesis statement that we started before research, and now you need to refine it based in research and make sure that what you thought ahead of time actually matches with what your research says. Or even if it was somewhat accurate and you want to make an adjustment because your research took you in a little bit different direction than you were expecting, this is the time to do that right before we get started adding note cards and different things to the outline. You can come back and keep revisiting this thesis statement the entire time you're working. So don't feel like that it's a done deal, but try to keep coming back and making sure that what you said in your argument matches what your research says and the direction your essay goes, and make sure that what you're saying in your argument is accurate based on the research that you have. And so that's something that will be a continual process as you keep going. And so I have my note cards here, and I have this over on the side, which is the outline, which I haven't really started yet because I want to develop my thesis statement first. So it helps me know what note cards and how to structure the rest of it. So when we're developing our thesis statements, you can see that, this out of the way. My original thesis statement was, through the practice of quantifying likes and followers, Instagram has developed a hierarchy that creates a false perception of individuals' worth. So what I want to do is, first, that should be an individual's worth. So what I want to do is I want to make sure that it accurately reflects the research. Okay. And so that's one of the things that I'm definitely going to be looking at here. And then discuss a relevant aspect of society. It needs to include a power dynamic, and it needs to make a connection. So really, when you're talking about this, the power dynamic is that thing I've highlighted in yellow. And that is really important because that's really the central focus of our essay is power. And so you have to be able to articulate what you're seeing as far as the power dynamic is concerned. It needs to discuss a relevant aspect of society. So that's your topic, right? So you need to have a topic that is important and relevant to not only you, but to other people that other people can identify with. It can start with something that's personal to you that you've experienced, but it can't be so personal that no one else has this experience, because then it's not relatable. And then why does somebody else need to read an essay about it if they can't relate? And most things are relatable. You just have to find the way to make it connect to others. And then you have to have some kind of connection or some kind of overarching kind of way to describe a society. So that's one of the things that I want you to consider as you are working through your essay. Now, one of the things that I noticed is when I started kind of reading about hierarchy, I went back in and I like, okay, I need to do some work here. I need to kind of figure out what is going on. When I went back through and started reading about hierarchy, which is number 9 in this article that I've been reading about power, one of the things that it focused on was really the positive aspects of hierarchy. And there are some really good things that can happen because there's a hierarchy. The specialization is important because people know their roles. Political power is differentiated into different aspects. And so people know like the laws are structured and organized in that sense. The vertical sense helps people kind of make sure that they get things done, and it makes sure that, there's a structure and an order. They started off with this whole idea of a war. What would happen if everybody was giving orders? Like, well, gosh, you're right. It would be chaos, right? And then you would lose if you were in battle. And so there's some really positive things. A lot of us, when we think about hierarchies, especially because most of us are on the bottom level, we think about the power and the thumb kind of pushing you down, or people keeping you from being able to do something. And so that's kind of where my mind was at the beginning, was this hierarchy of like likes and dislikes, and it being based off of, who puts lip gloss on the best. I mean, is that really something that we want to focus on? So my take on hierarchy wasn't really what was matching with the research that I had on hierarchy. And I was like, okay, but there is something about this where you don't get to have a a say. You don't get to be interacting with things. And so one of the other things that I wanted to look at here was this idea of unutilized potential. And this is something that kind of stuck out to me, because when you look here, it really talks about that if we don't use our potential, that we're missing out on a lot. And this inequality of all of these things is one of the ways that human potential becomes unutilized. And so that hierarchy to me is really more about inequality based on likes or dislikes. So I wanted to add that kind of element into my thesis statement once I got into it. So that's one of the things I want you to do, is make sure you go back and you revise and review what you're doing. So what I did is, and this is still a working thesis statement, I don't think this is going to be the end of it, but I wanted to make sure that idea was there. So I added on at the end of my thesis statement, I added on this idea, which leads to unutilized potential, because this hierarchy that's established means that some people's ideas are not getting floated out to the masses and not getting as much leverage. And so because not as many people are getting leverage, then it leads to unutilized potential. So that's where I wanted to go with that. After kind of digging back into what power meant, you might have to dig back in and realize that maybe your topic isn't worded the way that it needs to be worded to really get at what you want to say, or your research doesn't support the connection you're making. Maybe you need to change the connection to make it support your research. So those are the things you want to kind of do. We all revise and refine, and we all change things as we move along. That's totally normal to have to do that. You never hit it right out of the bat with a perfect thesis statement. So be willing to be flexible with that. So that is how I would revise it, and why I chose to revise mine. So hopefully you can kind of take that example and then think about how you can revise your own thesis statement. And then your revised thesis statement needs to be in your outline. Okay, so make sure you've updated and revised it, because that's going to be the central framework for your entire outline. Thanks.